Vanguard's been a game for a long time now, and every time a new season of the anime comes out, we get a new mechanic in the card game. And of all the mechanics we've received so far, my favorite by far has been Limit Break. Limit Break allowed the creators of the game to put very powerful effects into the game, with a condition that you had to have so much damage before you could activate them. In most cases it was 4, but in some cases it was 5. This is a great way to involve counterplay in the game, where you could basically force your opponent to not use their abilities or not get their effects off because you didn't deal them any damage. On the opposite side of things, it allowed people to not play rearguards and force your opponent to attack your vanguard to push you to that limit breaking point. To see what I mean, let's take a look at some of the cards that existed before Limit Break and compare them to what they became after Limit Break was introduced, to see the difference in power that this allowed. So in Shadow Paladin, we had Phantom Blaster Overlord, for example. This was a 13k base if you had Phantom Blaster Dragon in your soul, and with a counterblast of 3 and a Persona Blast, by which you're discarding a Phantom Blaster Overlord from your hand, when this unit attacks, it could get plus 10 and a crit, which is not great, but that's basically what they felt they were comfortable printing before Limit Break was introduced. There was no real way to stop effects from going off, so you had to make them more tame. And then when Limit Break came about, we had things like Raging Form Dragon. Now this is also a pseudo Persona Blast, which is why I chose it, but it is a Limit Break 4, choose 3 of your Revenger rearguards and retire them. At the end of the battle that it attacked, you can ride a Raging Form Dragon from your hand as stand. Then you give that unit 10,000 power till the end of the turn. This was super powerful. You're basically getting a standing Vanguard and retiring 3 units who have already attacked, which made this incredibly difficult for some opponents to deal with, as opposed to essentially just getting 10k in a crit. And of course you are losing units here, but you're not using any counterblast for this. There's a big difference in the effects here, and Limit Break allowed for these powerful, over-the-top abilities to go off without feeling cheated when you played the game. Some of my favorite cards, like Spectral Duke Dragon and Dudley Emperor, also have that same kind of effect. Duke being very similar to Raging Form actually, and Dudley just being one of the strongest hit-you-in-the-face cards that the game had ever seen at the time. Limit Break gave the creators of the game just this amazing ability to print these exciting and powerful cards without you saying, cool, it's turn 4, he rode Waterfall and double crit me from 2 damage. That felt great. Of course we did have Dimension Police, which kind of did that anyways, but in general, most clans felt pretty fair to play against. It was just this really great ecosystem between you and your opponent, where you were trying to not give them damage and they were trying to take damage, and you were gauging things out by knowing what your opponent did and if you were able to risk and hedge your bets on taking those damage. It was this really interactive state of the game, which we haven't really seen too much since. And then we got the Break Rides. These were units which all triggered off Limit Break 4 or 5 as well. However, they didn't do much on the actual turn you played them. Instead, you'd be saving that effect for the next turn when something rode upon it. We just got something pretty similar to this in Narukami, but again, that doesn't have the Limit Break effect and there's no real risk or management to the ability to use it. It's just ride again. Break rides were essentially when you ride this unit, it would get usually 10k and then an ability would go off. So speaking of Narukami, let's take a look at one of their break rides and compare it to their pseudo break ride in the new set. So here we had Eradicator Vowing Sword Dragon. Limit Break 4, when a Narukami rides this unit, choose one of your opponent's rearguards in the front row and retire it. Then your Vanguard gets plus 10,000 power. Now it doesn't sound insanely powerful, but it did work pretty well with the theme of Narukami at the time, and it allowed you to supplement the already powerful cards in your deck with these big swing turns. And it just felt really clean and fair to use. Of course, this is one of the first break rides, so it is, on the weaker side, but even comparing that to Phantom Blaster Overlord, which came out pretty close to the same time, you're just riding to get this effect off as opposed to having to have another copy of Phantom Blaster Overlord in your hand and discarding that with a counterblast of 3 to get 10k and a crit. You're already getting the 10k in this, and you're also retiring something from your opponent's board. This is easier to do, and it's more effective in general. Plus, just getting perfect guarded doesn't shut this down immediately. Now we can look at their pseudo break ride from the modern set, which is Detox Stinger Dragon. So it has a decent ability that when placed on Vanguard and Rearguard, you can counterblast one and bind one of your opponent's front row rearguards, then give this unit plus 5, which is pretty okay, but it does have that pseudo break ride effect that when rode upon, call this unit to rearguard and give your Vanguard 10,000 power. So you're still getting that 10,000 power and you're summoning it from rearguard, which is great. And it works pretty well because when it comes out to rearguard, you can counterblast one and bind a card. So it's basically the same thing as Valorant Sword was, except you're also getting a 12k body on the field, and you'll have to counterblast one to get rid of the other card. Now you might not think there's a very big power difference here, and to be honest, there isn't. But again, these are the first examples of each of these cards in each set. And again, Valorant Sword, you had counterplay. You could just not deal damage to your opponent and stick them at 3 damage. Then they wouldn't be able to use the skill, they wouldn't feel comfortable going into their more powerful Vanguard, and you'd just be kind of in this weird limbo. You'd have these very uncomfortable turns where they would have to plan and figure out a way to get more damage on themselves without being too risky and getting pushed to 6. Whereas Detox Stinger Dragon, cool, I rode. That's the only condition. So all this kind of comes back to something that I really would like to see come back to the game. Limit Break was just this really fun time in the game where there was counterplay and there was this way of thinking that hasn't really returned since. And I'm looking forward to hopefully getting a mechanic similar to it in the future. But what do you guys think? Do you enjoy Limit Break? Do you not enjoy Limit Break? Would you like to see some form of it come back in the modern era? Let me know in the comments section below. As always, I want to shout out my Patreons for helping support the channel. We're now up to 2, which is pretty exciting, and we have both Decimus and Akuyasa, which I may have not pronounced that correctly, but let me know in the comments and hopefully I can correct it in the next time, sorry. If you'd like to support the channel on Patreon and help me make better videos in the future and do more giveaways, then definitely check out the link in the description. Speaking of giveaways, like I said in the update video the other day, me and Vanguard Insider are going to be putting together a tournament on February 9th, where we're going to be giving away a trial deck of either OTT or Narukami, or both, depending on which deck you're playing. If you want a chance to enter that, just join the Discord in the comment section below. And yeah, hopefully we see you there and you guys can come out to the tournament. For more information, just click on the video on screen and it'll fill you in on everything you need. With that being said though, thank you guys so much for watching. This has been Miracle Trigger, and I will see you in the next video.